Please take a moment and pray with me. Now may the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, for you are our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. Now, let's talk about the good old days. Or were they? I guess it depends on who you ask. There's a line from a Billy Joel song that goes, the good old days weren't really that good, and tomorrow is not as bad as it seems. And it seems kind of appropriate today because, well, for one thing, the title of the song is Keeping the Faith. And where we're just getting started into this new year, it might be a good time to reflect on some of the not so old days. Some folks might say that, well, we're having it pretty good right here and now, and we've got a whole future out ahead of us. Why would you bother with the past? Well, like me, for instance, I'm retired. I can do pretty much what I want to do. Bills are paid. I got a pretty wife. I got it made in the shade. So why would I be concerned with things that have already happened? Well, there's a lot to be learned from history, both good and bad. And we really can't tell where we're going if we can't remember where we've been. Can you imagine just the average person in their lifetime, the history that they get to see unfold? My father lived from August of 1898 to January 1981. It's almost 83 years. Now, the year he was born, America consisted of 45 states. William McKinley was serving his second year as president, and we just fought a war with Spain. There was a whole new century about to open up. And it was being ushered in by men like Theodore Roosevelt and the Wright brothers, Thomas Edison, Henry Ford, Walter Reed, and one of my favorites, newsman Lowell Thomas, who met with and interviewed almost every important person in the 20th century. It's just to name a few because you could go on and on. And these weren't just men, these were beacons, lighthouses in a foggy world that guided us through the real industrial revolution by creating better paying jobs and safer work conditions that actually made the middle class possible. Their ideas and their inventions made a better life and easier life for all of us. They opened up transportation, both on the land and in the air, so more people, if they wanted to see America, they could. They found cures for diseases that were thought to be incurable. And all the while, we knew what was going on in other parts of the world because of accurate news reporting. But before there were labor laws, there were dangerous sweatshops that exploited child labor. Before there were cures, there were epidemics. We fought 2 world wars and suffered through a Great Depression that brought America right to its knees. People of my generation grew up with folks who had lived through the Great Depression, and they were a whole different breed. They knew firsthand what grinding poverty was like, what it was like to lose everything, to have everything taken away from you, even hope. They used to have a saying that being poor is no disgrace, but it can be damned inconvenient. And nothing with them was ever wasted or thrown away. If it broke, you fixed it. If it wore out, you found a new purpose for it. I think one of the first chores I had on the farm was straightening out bent nails. I had a flat rock and a ball-peen hammer, and I'm lucky I got any thumbs left, but you had to save those nails. I think I'm one of the few people in the world that remembers a thing called Mendits. It was a little kit you bought at the hardware store, and it was assorted screws and rivets and things like that. And if you sprung a leak in your tea kettle or whatever, well, just get out the appropriate size Mendit, plug up the hole, and you're right back in business, good as new. Because if it sprung too many leaks, it became a container for rusty nails. So everything had a purpose and a repurpose. Now with all the technology it takes to build a microwave oven or a color TV, if something goes wrong with it, it's easier just to discard it and buy a new one. No one tries to fix anything anymore, and some parts are recycled and they find a new purpose. I grew up in Newmarket, and back then, now I'm talking 40s and 50s here, a person could spend his whole life right there in that little town. Never had to leave if he didn't want to. We had grocery stores and hardware stores, clothing and shoe stores, restaurants, car dealerships, all right there in that little town. All the factories were up and running. Anyone who wanted a job could have one. Most people walked to work every day. All the family farms were going strong, and that's where I came from. You know, a farmer is one guy that never has to go to work. He wakes up in the morning, it's right there waiting for him. I started school shortly after the Second War ended, and the first grade class at public school was 14 kids. And some had never known their fathers. They'd gone off to war and didn't come back. And it seems that none of us were really very well off. Some were better than others, but no matter how bad you thought you had it, there was always somebody worse. My school lunches back then were Peter Pan peanut butter and Welch's grape jelly on Wonder Bread. Now you put that in a paper bag and throw it in the coat closet, and by noontime that peanut butter was hot as a rock. The jelly had leached its way through the bread, and it just can't get any worse than this. Till one day the kid next to me showed me what he had for lunch. He had 2 slices of white bread and French's yellow mustard. That was it. No cookie, no apple, no nothing. 2 slices of bread and yellow mustard. Well, that peanut butter and jelly started looking pretty good after that. The Polish and French kids in town went to St. Mary's Catholic School, and we only saw them after school hours. There was only one black family that I knew of, and their kids went to public school with us, and they lived and worked right there in town. Nobody ever gave it a thought. There were 3 Jewish families in town, and their kids went to public school with us. They celebrated their own holidays, but they celebrated Christmas and everything else right along with us. They just wanted to fit in. My very first girlfriend was a Jew. She looked like a real young Barbra Streisand. And they were from one of the better off families. Her dad was a very successful defense attorney. And probably too successful, because they say that defendants could go in the courtroom thinking they were guilty, but when Bob Shaw finished with his spiel, they weren't so sure anymore. My father would say I should have stayed with her, because the way I was going, I'd probably need a good lawyer. But I think the greatest thing that we had in common was we were both avid Gene Autry fans. And as you grow up and grow older, you grow apart, and left with a few good memories. Then in the late 1960s, Newmarket changed again. People started going out of town to buy their food at the big box stores because it was cheaper. Cheap foreign-made shoes and clothes flooded the market. People bought those because they didn't cost much. The factories took the hit. All the shoe factories and the textiles and everything, one by one, all up down the street, they all shut down. The grocery stores on Main Street fell victim to the big box stores. They just couldn't compete. The family farms started going out because of high taxes and low milk prices. Some were bought up by developers, and they're gone forever. Some, thank God, went into conservation easements, and Audubon and UNH bought up quite a bit of land. For the foreseeable future, anyway, that's still open land. Now, but in a few short years, the whole way of life just disappeared. Now, instead of family farms, we have agribusiness and factory farms. There's an oxymoron for you. But everything has its season. And the only thing for certain is there's going to be change. Even an old plow horse that's worked his heart out for you reaches a point in his life where he can't digest his food anymore. His system starts to shut down. And you know if you let him go on, it means a slow, painful death for him. So it's his time, and the decision is made for you. The humane thing is to have him put down. But he leaves you some good memories. And in our lives, we have to say goodbye to a lot of people. And most have lived full, rich lives, and they've gone to their reward. Sometimes you have to just wonder why. There's a time and a reason for everything, and they never really go away. They're with us forever in our hearts and our minds, and the knowledge that we're going to be together again someday. My brother used to say, it's too bad all the old timers are gone. I'd say, well, what do you think we are? We've heard all their stories, and we can treasure them and pass them along. But now it's time for us to tell our stories. Stories about old workhorses. Stories about growing up on a farm and starting school in the post-war years. Stories that we all have, and we have to pass down to the next generation. And you know, if you remember the good times and don't dwell on the bad times, those bad times just fade away. So the good old days weren't really all that good. And tomorrow, who knows what tomorrow is going to bring. But as the song goes, it's a big, wide, wonderful world we live in. And January 21st, 2018 is shaping up to be a pretty good day. Amen.